this looks good.
Oh my god, this is delicious.
All right, so now we're gonna go into our plate of the day. Entrepreneurship as an indie artist. So as we mentioned earlier, Rebekah Laur'en, you have a new LLC, and the LLC is called Soundproof 4. Can you tell us a little bit about what Soundproof 4 is?
Oh
And
man, Soundproof 4. The Sound of Change is a record label. And I do most of my production, of course, through Soundproof 4. And it's just the overall concept of innovation musically for artists from their creative freedom to their freedom of just being artists, not being bound to, a label. Just you do contract work with Soundproof 4, but you're not signed, you're not bound to us. Like you don't do nothing. You go on and be who you are. And and just the concept of creating like real music again, like conscious music or just party music, vibing music, artists being their authentic selves and being who they are and not afraid to be who they are. And also, Soundproof 4, aside from just a label, like I do plan on venturing out into film. I do plan on venturing out into actually creating a school that teaches media. So like, starting my own streaming site, like all of that stuff is what's in the goal for Soundproof 4. So I do plan on becoming like the independent Amazon of the music industry. I really do. I plan on becoming like my own thing, for real, for real. So yeah.
so what is like, so you said like the goal is to like have the artist be like contracted to you, but then also have that freedom of like steering their own career and stuff like that. What
hmm
kind of goes into that? Like as
Um,
opposed to like being signed to like a major label and stuff like that.
so when you sign to a major label, you literally give over your rights to yourself, basically, and to your music, depending on who's in the room. I honestly say it's all based on who you know and who's really doing those deals for you, because 90% of what's in those contracts you do not understand. People don't understand that music industry, it's a business, which means it's a legal business, which means any contract that you sign is a legal document. So there's a lot happening in the sense of law. But in the sense of, let's say I sign you to my label, you're not really signing your contract, meaning we're going to contract project by project. You can work
Mm,
with whoever you want to work with. You don't even have to work with Soundproof 4. But if you feel Soundproof 4 has what you need and what you want, what we do is we sign a contract for your project. We do your campaigns, everything in the sense of how you want the money to come about. If you feel like you want to borrow money from the label, it's everything up front. In other words, you see everything that's happening because you have full control, because you yourself are a business of your own. You're an artist, but you're a business. And that's what people don't realize with major labels. They need you more than you need them.
mm,
So the in exchange is what I can do for your sound and how we can help each other. That's how I see it supposed to be between artists and labels. How we can truly help each other do what we both want, you want, and what we want. And at the end of the day, once we've done that, boom, bam, thank you, officer, we good. So
mm.
and like
Where did
keeping
that
the
name
rights over
come
music.
from?
Oh man, Soundproof 4 is funny. So at Westminster Choir College, I used to be in one of the little practice rooms. You remember the soundproof rooms in the basement?
Mm-hmm.
What's it? Seabrook Hall? What's the name of
Seabrook
the dorm?
Projects.
Yeah, the projects. Yes, PJs. Yeah. So in the basement there was a soundproof, and it was Soundproof 4. And I was always in that soundproof room, and I would be in there at nighttime practicing for piano and just like creating in general, and just like recording, or because you remember I used to record all the time in the soundproof rooms,
Mm-hmm.
and just like working. So out of that, I was like, oh, that's what I'm going to name the label, Soundproof 4. That's basically how I developed personally on the level as an artist, was just in those practice rooms.
I love that because I like what a lot of people don't realize in terms of like my story with like YouTube and stuff was because the whole YouTube channel started out of boredom in those soundproofs too. So it was
Yeah.
like that kind of like birthplace of like, the first time that I did any parody songs or like,
hmm
any just like random music video songs were coming from those soundproofs. So I think that it's really cool that you
Exactly.
like took that and created something, because if Westminster's gonna give us anything, they might as well give you the name for your fucking LLC. Fuck out of here, all right?
Nah, that's real shit, man. Like it's a lot of work at that school, man. Good God.
Seriously,
My
for
spirit's still
real.
intact, but dang.
Can you tell us a little bit about your musical background?
Oh man, yeah, my musical background. So I am classically trained. I studied opera. So lyric soprano is actually my voice part. A lot of people think I'm a mezzo, but I'm not. I'm a lyric. And yeah, I studied opera when I was at Westminster Choir College, and I had a lot of great opportunities. I'll be honest, like Westminster was a trip of a school, but I had opportunities there that I know for a fact I wouldn't have got at other places. Like we did Carnegie Hall, we did the Kimmel Center, like we performed at some of the greatest venues for musicians in general. But yeah, that's a little bit of my background.
Yes.
Just speaking
Yeah.
sort of to Westminster a little bit, and I know that some of the shittiness that happened up there was also just the lack of diversity in certain aspects, and
Yeah.
having to navigate a space with your identity, and you think about opera, right? And for some people opera is just so far removed from our like current reality, right? So but that is it is its own industry. It does have its own sets of practices, right? But the
Mm.
experience of being in the weeds of these sorts of classical trainings has its own sort of experience. So I'd love to hear a little bit about what what those challenges, rather, I won't say struggle, I'll say challenges, like were navigating that space as a whole, even in academics, even outside of music.
Yeah. So I'm very open and honest about my struggle at Westminster Choir College. It made me and it broke me and molded me at the same time. Believe it or not, what was interesting, I had a lot of situations, of course, with it being predominantly white, but I grew up around predominantly white, so that didn't technically bother me. I was very much aware of the environment I was going into. But surprisingly, a lot of my issues was actually with people who were of my color.
Mm.
And because Juan, as you know, it wasn't that many of us,
No.
but we weren't exactly the nicest to each other at times. And but there were those who were very supportive, like for instance, our twins, Sharice and Sharicia, like very supportive. They always cheered you on. Um, and when you did deal with things where it was racial issues, I mean, they was your whistleblowers, you know what I'm saying? Like, and so there were times where, as you come into the school, like for me especially, because I didn't have a huge music background in that sense of, oh, singing in the choir, or I didn't come from an artsy high school. I was homeschooled, so a lot of my stuff was actually self-taught. And my first voice lesson was like the year before I graduated from high school. And my voice teacher was like, oh yeah, no, you need to do this. I go audition and I get into the school, and here's all these people who have had this experience,
Mm-hmm.
and they know how to sight read. They know how to read music. I didn't even know how to read music. So aside from feeling like I was behind, here I am feeling like I got to prove myself to these white folks. And I started to eliminate that because at the same time, my family, we're very strong. My family is always like, don't prove yourself to no white people, prove yourself to yourself. And remember, every time you go out there, you making a way better for somebody else in your community and for your people. And so it did. It was a lot. I learned a lot. It was a lot of mental things that I had to like break through. It was a lot of things personally, and even with sexuality and just like different things as well. Like it was a lot of breaking through of things, and just social structures and the old mindsets. Like a lot of people's mindsets were old that were there, and it was just crazy. But I learned a lot, and through learning a lot of that, I learned how to maneuver through a lot of different situations in life. So yeah, that was, yeah. I
Yes.
tried to say all of that in a small scope, but I don't know if that that worked.
That totally answers it, and I appreciate you going into the nuance of like a yes, there were a lot of white people, but I had a different experience that was challenging, and I think it's
Mm,
important that we're able to like call each other in, to call each other out about shit like that, because I think what people often fail to recognize is that your success in that space that isn't dominated by your community should not depend on the detriment of
mhm,
the community in the process. And detriment doesn't have to mean that you're like literally like pulling people down and wishing bad upon people, but that you
mhm.
don't have grace and space for the lack of equity that exists for you guys in
Exactly.
identity, and then like are willing to be in community, and that's an active thing. It's not just like, oh, because we're black, we're community. I mean, yes, we're part of the same community.
Mhm.
Be in community is to be actively collaborating, right? To be
Yeah.
actively self-aware and
Exactly.
each other down, even when it's indirectly, you know what I mean? So I think that that's totally important. And the reason I had even asked that was because sometimes, or at least, you know, I went to LaGuardia with Skittles, and so that was my artistic
Yeah.
experience. But like sometimes the way in which your creativity gets to be its organic self in a space, sometimes it's hindered because like
Yeah.
you're not able to get real feedback on your work because you don't get you or don't understand.
Yeah. Like in the essence of what you're saying with that, I'm gonna say something like, all right, so one, like you know this, if you're a black singer at this school particularly, they will automatically want to throw you in the spirituals. There's nothing wrong with that. Like I love telling my people's story, but at the same time, it's easy to get stuck with that. And before you know it, you up there singing, "Mama, is Master going to sell us tomorrow?" Like stuff like that. You like, oh, wait a minute now, hold up. I came here to learn how to sing, you know, Bach, Mozart, all of these people, and here I am singing, "Mama, is Master going to sell me?" So there's like, you know, what I'm saying, like there's so many different components, and that's the thing. I think when I say it was just a lot of experiences, you can't really say all of what happened, but overall the spectrum of no, I actually am, you know, more than just this label or this idea, and you having to work, of course, the concept of what we call black taxes. You got to work 10 times harder than the white woman in the room who can go up there and not practice and sound like she pitchy. But if you go up there and you a little off, all of a sudden you ain't practiced. They want to tear you down in front of the whole room. So yeah, you got that element of things that you're dealing with. So the mental strength that has to come in with that. But then also, like I had a coach one time, I can't remember her name at the school, but I'm not even gonna say her name. But she was I think from South Africa, and she said something to me one time that I realized what I was dealing with in that moment. She was like, you know, it's a shame when people like you have the gift that you have. And I was like, what was that supposed to mean? So those elements that you got to fight through, it's enough that, especially in the classical realm that you're in, everybody's mainly white on the stage. You got to deal with all of that. And then you got to deal with the sense of how your blacks sometimes might tear you down more than your whites at times. So it's a lot. And I pushed through a lot of things, but like, I mean, when you have people like Juan, I mean, he was like literally like my only like real friend on that campus, like for real. And
Mexican.
yeah, like
I realized in college to some professors he was Mexican Juan.
Oh yes.
Yeah, man.
My English credit was well earned. We will just say that because those English teachers swore that I would not be able to speak English. But
that's madness.
But I'm interested to know like how this experience, because you like you said, you were coming from a classical, like Westminster was all classical music, right? But now you've gone on to become like a singer-songwriter and start your own label and whatnot. How did the experience of like being in a classical school affect that trajectory? Because I feel like it's real easy when you go to like a conservatory to be talked into, oh, well, now you're doing classical music and like be really pushed into, you're either doing classical music to sing at the Met or you're trying to become a classroom teacher. And so like starting a label and becoming a singer-songwriter is kind of like left from that. How did the experience affect that?
Being on that campus showed me how you're not supposed to fit in. And it showed me how to find my own way. And if you do fit in with everybody, you'll just be wanting to be picked all the time. Versus I can create my own way and make a way for many other people besides myself. Being in this room that I'm in, it's not a lot of women. And it's cool because now we're in a time after the pandemic, you see more Black people becoming their own entrepreneurs. And especially in the music field as an independent artist, everybody's realizing you don't need major labels. Everybody's realizing all you need is just yourself and a real good solid team, and you can really build yourself massive. And in my experience, like you said, going from classical to all of a sudden I'm outside of classical world, I didn't like the feel of it. I didn't like feeling like um, I would always be sized up with the next black girl in the room, or even just the concept of maybe I got into the room because I am lighter in my skin complexion, or yeah, I sound good, but maybe my diction is not the best, but they like the certain type. I didn't like that. I didn't like the fact of every time you're a black woman, you go somewhere, they call you the next Leontine Price just because you're a black woman who sings. I didn't like that.
Mm.
R&B, however, this realm gives you space to be who the hell you are. You make your own sound, your own style. They see you as yourself. And creating a space for myself, it's created like a legit lane for me. I don't know how to explain it, but it's just I've always known that I would be my own and have my own and just create my own path. So I just honestly stuck with my experiences and realized, hey, you know what? I can do this on my own. I don't need other people in the essence to tell me if I'm good or not. I believe I'm good, so I know I can do it. So yeah, it just grew into like a whole entire thing of just push for yourself. So yeah.
Yeah. And so, like, going from there and pushing from yourself and all that stuff, what are some things you wish you knew maybe back in 2014, 15 when you were graduating Westminster to now 2021, that you've like started this label and you are like kind of being your own entrepreneur. What are some things you wish you knew back then?
I was so focused on the academics of things that I wish I had realized, oh yeah, it's good learning your craft, but there's a hustle to it also. Um, there were things in the street that I didn't learn that because I was in school. You know, like there's a whole hustle to the craft. It's not just, oh, you go up here, you learn how to sing real well. And any room you walk into, they're gonna love you. Nah, like it's a real hustle and grind. Like you gotta connect, you gotta meet people, you gotta be singing somewhere almost every other night. You gotta be out and about. And I wish I had started that hustle process way sooner. I wish I started that when I was in my freshman year. Because I mean, we was right there near New York. All I had to do was hop the train every weekend. So it's like I wish I had did that a little more. You know what I'm saying? But other than that, that's the only thing I wish. But
Yeah.
I'm proud and happy where everything else has led and how the process has been. So yeah,
And I will say this, Westminster was a hard school.
it
Like,
was hard.
so the fact that you didn't like do that, I understand like the desire to have be wanting to do that, but that school was hard. Like,
It
you want to
was.
talk about music boot camp? That shit was music military school.
It was.
Like,
No, like real life. Like I think for the first 2 years, I was on like literal like academic probation. Like I'm honest about my shit. Like I couldn't for the longest. I felt like there was something wrong with me because I couldn't seem to get it. And then all of a sudden, I started realizing, I'm sorry, but like white people make shit hard for no damn reason. Like
mm,
it wasn't that hard. It was
it didn't
really
need to be that
simple.
hard.
It was really simple things. Like why the hell did I fail musicianship two times? Like that didn't make any sense. It
Mhm.
was simple things, and they made it so complicated and so complex. But then I started realizing the mindsets of the majority there was also complex and complicated.
Mhm.
People that we thought were so smart weren't technically that smart. Not trying to belittle anything or anybody, but you start to realize it really wasn't that serious in that sense of
Mhm.
things. So yeah, like yeah, it was hard school. It was hard as hell. So yeah. Hmm.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. I just realized I didn't ask you why you think being an entrepreneur is important as an artist.
I think it's important for an artist to be an entrepreneur because you start to run things, not run things, but you start to handle yourself differently. As an entrepreneur, I see everything that I do as an artist is a business. Like my time is money. You don't waste time on stupid stuff when you start to realize you're an actual entrepreneur. You can't afford to waste time. You take things more serious. It's more discipline to the core. And even though music in itself is the discipline that we all know, it's like you either do it or you don't. You know what I'm saying? But the entrepreneurship adds even more of an element to you understanding more in the terms of business of what's happening in the room. Like not just relying on everybody else around you to take care of your business. Because let's be real, we've seen what's happening with some artists that are relying on others to take care of the business. They're not taking care of it. Like they either owe taxes or they don't own their music. It's a whole lot of stuff to that. So yeah, that's the most important thing, especially the Black artists. Entrepreneurship is extremely important in my opinion. So yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I was actually gonna ask, I feel like there's also a way in which having the ownership lie, or having the reliability of your brand lie, and people feeling like they're gonna profit off of it really puts you in a
Hmm.
dynamic where suddenly who you are as an artist isn't enough unless it can yield specific results that they're measuring
Hmm.
by their standards. And so I wonder, like, how, like, either positively or negatively, how has the dynamic of like having to create your own lane to a degree, right? Like, so you said like musically, like there are people you compare yourself to, but I would argue that like who Rebekah is, right, though, as an
Hmm.
artist isn't what those people are. You
Hmm.
have your own experience and your own
Hmm.
musicality that goes into, even if it's that style, like making room for who you are as the individual to be marketable, or so how have you navigated that aspect, or not navigated it, right? Because I think also sort of not resigning to it is its own power as well.
I think for me, I've always known I'm unique. Like I don't really compare myself to other artists. But I do hear other artists who I believe have heard me. I ain't gonna lie. But I am my own artist. I've always been Rebekah Laur'en. Like a lot of people try to say I sound like this artist or that artist. I don't sound like anybody. I sound like me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I take pride in that. I'm not gonna lie. Because to me, that's the uniqueness of my gift. And in that, I also know what value I bring into a room with that. So in the sense of marketing, for the longest I tried to somehow sound a little bit like the radio. That doesn't work for me. That's not me. And even with my look and my styles, like I just recently think I got to a point where I accept who the hell I am. And really that's what people want. People want real people. And you either like me or you don't. I'm not really pressed about that. I'm sharing myself in my music. And it's not personal. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. But at the end of the day, I tell stories. I do want to connect with people. I want to help people in their healing processes. I'm in my process of healing. And overall, I just believe in just being who the hell you really are. And yeah, just be bold in yourself. So yeah.
Come on. So, is there like first 5 tips that you would give to a musician who wants to be an indie artist?
First 5 tips. First one is do your research. Um, do your research on the people, not the artists, the people who work for the artists, meaning those are the people that are really getting them into the doors. It's not so much the other artists, it's the people working around them. Second, work on your craft. Take it seriously. Um, who do you want to be? Who are you? That's the biggest thing. We've already had Michael Jackson's, we've already had Mariah Carey's, we've already had Whitney Houston's, but we haven't had a you. So be strong in who you are. Number three, learn how to market. Understand that you're a business. You gotta learn how to market. That's something that I'm at right now, to be honest. You know,
Mhm.
you gotta learn how to market. And the fourth thing, I mean, just stay consistent and persistent on everything, every level. Don't give up because you're gonna want to give up, but you gotta keep going. And overall, love what you do because if you don't have love for it, you'll fall off like real life. And it's bigger than you. Like you got to understand, it's not just you. We're all a human race that's connected. So what I do affects 20,000 other people in the world, and that will help other people go forward. So you gotta realize it's not just about you. So yeah, that's what I
I
got.
think I also like thinking about it and hearing what you were saying. I think it's also important for people to take into consideration, like, when you're being an artist, when you're becoming an artist or a musician or whatever, like, you really have to evaluate what your goal is
Hmm.
at the end of the day, because you could be a successful musician and still like be holding on a full-time job, but like be
Exactly.
content, you know?
Yeah.
not everybody's gonna reach Jay-Z and Beyonce status.
No.
So like you can be just as much a success by creating your stuff and still, you know, holding down a normal life. Any sense of normalcy.
I agree with that. That was good one. Yeah.
I'll be saying something sometimes. This one.
So silly.
And I feel like even as somebody who's like not in the music industry, I think one big area of opportunity that I think what you're creating with your brand is that the reality of what Skittles was saying of like, oh, well, you're not necessarily going to be the Jay-Z's or the Beyonce, is also driven by who controls the market and who
exactly
who, right? So, you know, it's not because of, oh, like sit down, your talent's not that good that you'll be like, that's not what Skittles is saying. It's just like the game is a game. It is
exactly
a game, and with the same energy, you know, what we were referring to with the stock market games, like, you know, like it is, there is a concentration of power, and there are these things that are loopholes that work in the favor of
exactly
companies that do not serve you, even like contractually. You just don't have, like, not owning your masters is a very big thing.
It's a huge thing.
You know, that is just been the way, and people have accepted it because it is what it is. And that's not even a white versus black thing. And I think that's another really important thing to break down about the music industry is that actually in the music industry, there are quite a few black and Latinx, you know, even in that side of the world, people who hold stake, who are upholding the system because of their business. So in that mindset, sometimes your limit is not, oh, you know, because I'm a black woman and, like, you know, I'm more melanated than others. That might be true, but that might not even be number one on the list, right? Like, it's about that appeal. You are their stock, essentially. You are their around and shit like that. And so the more that we allow ourselves to take that power away by not participating in that system and participating in more things like your company, then we start to shift the dynamics. Because even when like a Chance the Rapper emerges, for example, immediately these motherfuckers are trying to find ways to either appeal or like still profit by working with, because they can't, you know, he's an independent artist, so quite do that thing, but they're still going to try to find a way to control how he gets to intersect in their world. And so I don't know, like there needs to be a collective shift. And I think as much
I agree
as you want about Kanye, and this is the last I'll say, but when he on his little rant about the masters and all that stuff, whether he accomplished everything that he was ranting about or not is a different thing. But his highlighting that so deeply and psychotically, I think was so fucking important to start that conversation.
It was. No, I agree with you 100% because, see, I appreciate you saying all that. So I agree 100% because the thing is, of like coming into the industry now, it's like you can't just be an artist. You have to be a corporation. Like you said, beating them at their own game, right? So if you think about it, I don't know if you guys remember the story of what was really happening with Tupac and Biggie before they actually allegedly got murdered, right? Biggie and Tupac were talking about becoming independent artists. They wanted to take the money away from labels. So their whole game was, you know what, why can't we just start our own thing? Why can't we own our music and just really just be our own bosses? We don't need them, because they saw how much was coming in from their music alone. So they were already on that. And that's the thing is, I think we're in a time of especially black artists, because let's be honest, when you look at all of the films and the movies about the industry, they have screwed over so many artists, like so many, not even just black, just people in general. Like they have out-hoed the artists completely. They put them on the corners and pimp them to death. Like, let's be real. They take all their talent, they kill them, and then them people die. They got drug issues. They're broke. You know what I'm saying? And what are they doing? They're benefiting off of this, right? So take back your power as artists. You don't realize you don't need them. And people got this thing where I'm a creative. That's like how they tell you creative people don't know how to do math. That's a lie. Learn. Pick up a book. Read. You can truly learn how to run your own business. And then even when you get to a certain point, you hire people who know more than you know, who can truly run your business. And like it, yeah, so I got happy about that, because that's the passion behind it all. It's the concept of, I'm not going to them anymore. You make them come to you, but why do you even want them when you can create your own corporation and have your own money and really taking care of other artists the way you want to, or even just helping out your communities in general. So yeah, that's like really where my mindset is with that. So yeah.
And us as consumers, we got to be better. As the person who's
Oh yeah.
non-musical person in the group right now, like, I really, even with this platform, again, completely different medium, but like to me it's less like, it's like I don't question the quality of the depth of the conversation that Skittles have. Sometimes we have episodes and the quality, like the conversation is better than a lot of shit that platforms that have money and production values are putting out surface. But if people aren't watching and sharing and engaging, it makes our fight a lot harder. And so as consumers, we have to let ourselves get back to this mode of paying attention to independent artists a lot more, and not just let TikTok trends drive what's on our playlist. We have to do, like, people talk about movements and shit like that. You want to, hashtag Black excellence, hashtag Black Lives Matter all the way. Find you some independent artists and just fucking listen. You don't even got to go to the protests. How about that? Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's just so many ways. There's so many ways. So consumers, I'm encouraging us to really listen to this and acknowledge that there's people out here trying to make the work happen and are literally putting LLCs together to make it legit. Like, what is our commitment back to the artists who create for us?
Well, Rebekah, thank you so much for joining us for brunch today. Are there any shout outs? Tell the people where they can find you.
Oh man, thank y'all for having me, first of all. But you can find me on Instagram, r.l_music. You can also just find me on Facebook, Rebekah Laur'en, REBEKAHLAUR_EN. And yeah, you can Google me, baby. Just Google me. I promise you, I'll pop up.
Yes. And Julissa, where can they find us at?
Well, y'all can tune into all of our episodes anywhere you stream. You can find us on the socials, on Facebook and Instagram at Ladies Who Bronche, on Twitter at Ladies Bronche. You can find me and Skittles at The Real Skittles on Instagram and Twitter. You can find me at Julissa on Twitter and Instagram as well.
Yeah, and until next time, brunch.
Thank y'all for having me though, for real. Thank y'all.